And we are back on Build Phase TV. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and on today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at two different sets of card reveals for the Maximum Carnage release that's coming out on, I think, the 17th. Full disclosure, my reactions to these first cards will not be authentic. These are not first reactions. I actually recorded a whole video reacting to these cards, and it got corrupted or something. I'm not sure what happened. Either way, I no longer have it. So we're going to dive into these admittedly inauthentic reactions here. So to get started, we have Shriek. Shriek is a 2/5. Oh, wait, did I turn the thing off? Pause. Shriek is a 2/5/5 with flight and range and a power called Dark Empathy. Dark Empathy costs a yellow, so we have to say Jessica Jones, although not in second chance format, thank goodness. Choose two face-up enemy characters in the same row and then have one strike the other. So the ideal use case for this is where you use one big threat to take out another big threat. The worst use case is probably using some kind of a threat to take out just something, to do something. And probably you're going to be presented with board states where Dark Empathy, like if I have a choice of giving you a really good trade, or I guess they're all value trades because only one enemy strikes the other. If I have a choice of giving you something that can really hurt me or playing a different line of recruiting characters, I of course I'm going to choose the line where you can't do as much damage to me. So I don't know how much actual value you're going to get out of Dark Empathy. There will absolutely be times where it looks great. I don't know that it's going to consistently be a power that you can really count on. Mother and Father. When Carnage appears or attacks on your side, Shriek gains 1 XP. So as of what we know right now, I think we have a 1-drop Carnage who's the Underworld affiliated, and then we have the 6-drop Carnage who I'm not terribly impressed with. That means you're kind of relying on multiple recruits of the 1-drop to get this. Yes, the 1-drop has 2 health, so that means he can at least get you 3 of this experience for hitting 1-1-drop, but you're going to have games where you just don't level her. You just don't see the Carnages. Particularly in a format where we don't have all of our card draw deck filtration tools available, she's going to live and die on the back of how deeply you can dig in your deck. So what do you get if you're able to recruit this? Well, she becomes a 5/7/5. Now 5/7 is a decent stat line when you couple it with flight and range. 5 health, just when one of the characters she needs to rely on, the character she needs to rely on coming in this box is a 6-drop, these stats just don't feel like they're doing enough. I think she's going to be a fun kitchen table character. Oh, I forgot to mention the art. I love the card art on this character. I'm really happy to see some like authentic 90s Maximum Carnage artwork within this. I complained a few times about, I would have liked to see more of the older style art within Venom. I'm glad that we're getting it in Maximum Carnage, so no complaints there. In fact, high praise on the art. So the power she gets at level 2 is We're a Family, which is a build phase, pay a red, and you get to recruit a symbiote affiliated, which is important, and I think that's a good move on their part. That future-proofs this character against future abuses. Like if they do another doppelganger who maybe would be super overpowered here, you're not going to be able... That could also cut the other way. That could also be a criticism. Hey, this kind of shackles her in a way where we're going to see how good she is and she's never going to get better. There's no future doppelganger that's going to make her better. Well, I guess unless it has this specific affiliation. But you pay a red and you put a Demo Goblin or a doppelganger supporting character from your hand onto your side. Now, in my initial reaction to her, I said she is going to live and die on the back of how good our Demo Goblin and doppelganger are. Either one of these cards worth 1 card? And the answer is yes, they absolutely are. So well, I won't get to them yet. Sorry. First, we have 6-drop Shriek, same art as the main character. Again, I kind of like it when they mix it up and we get more than one piece of art for all the cards of a character. That said, if you're only going to give us one artwork that you're going to use on the main characters and the supporting characters of Shriek, this is a great art panel. I really don't have complaints with this art. 5/5/1 with flight and range. Now, if you're paying 6 recruit for a 5/5/1 with flight and range, that doesn't feel terribly good. I don't care what the words are on this card. Kind of doesn't matter if you're playing 6 recruit for a 5/5. But you're not going to be playing 6 recruit for a 5/5 because of Maximum Mom. You pay 3 less to recruit Shriek for each of the following supporting characters on your side. Doppelganger, and Demogoblin. These are not linked to the symbiote affiliated, so this character could potentially get better if there's some future Doppelganger that comes out in another set that's Sinister Six affiliated. She can still get the benefit from him. Is that a big deal? No, I don't think so. And Sonic Beam. In combat, she can pay a blue and put 3/-1 counters on an enemy character. Now, she can do this in any combat, so she can do this while attacking and defending, and that gives her the functional reach of being an 8/8. Now, 8/8 for 6 still isn't the best deal in the world, but if you're playing her as a 3-drop and you have the functional range of an 8/8 on board, which means you can attack with this 5/5 and you can put 3/-1 counters on something, so she can stun up through 8/8, that's a good deal. And if you have both of these dudes and she's a free drop, then 8/8 for free, that's infinite value. If you're paying nothing, now it does take some setup, admittedly, and that setup is going to live and die on the back of how good these supporting characters are. And the truth is, these supporting characters are freaking great. So again, I don't have my authentic first reaction to this guy, but I absolutely love this card art. And let's dig into the card. This is a 3-cost symbiote affiliated 6/2/1 with flight and range. Now, I've gone on at some length that I think 6 is a really important breakpoint for turn 3. Being able to put 6 attack into your opponent on turn 3 almost guarantees that you can stun whatever their turn 3 play is. Obviously, not every deck needs to be at exactly 6 attack on turn 3, but it's something to think about in deck building. This guy has a printed 6 attack. He also has emotional paralysis, main phase, pay a blue, choose an exhausted enemy character, and it can't ready until its next turn. So the one weak point on this card that I see is the 1 health. If you compare this guy to somebody like Primeval, who costs 1 less, but can also attack for 6, Demogoblin, while he doesn't have that additional 1 health, he has the ability to attack from range, which means there's going to be attacks he can make that are value trades for him. Again, value trade is when you're able to attack into your opponent and you don't get stunned back. And whereas Primeval would, attacking the same target, would get stunned back and take a wound. So in a way, giving him range kind of, in certain circumstances, not always, and it's not exactly the same, but it kind of gives him an extra 1 health. The likelihood that this guy's going to get 2 swings, while it's not as good as having just a solid 2 health, range definitely increases the likelihood that he's going to be able to get those 2 swings. To further shore up the weakness on this card, emotional paralysis, pay a blue, choose an exhausted enemy character, it can't ready on its next turn. There's already a 3-drop, I think it's Paladin, who's hammer affiliated, who had to stun a guy in order to freeze them, and that guy has seen some marginal play. The 1-drop Iceman has seen such saturating, suffocating play that I don't ever want to see that card again, or at least not for a while. I'm sure in a year I'll be ready for him to come back. My point is, freeze is a really, really strong effect. It's a really powerful effect. It's important, and if you kind of squint, if what this guy's doing is attacking and stunning something, then using a blue to freeze it down, that something can't hit him back. So while he doesn't truly have 2 health, he has 2 different things on this card that allow him to essentially make value trades. Like, I attack into your guy that doesn't have range, I get the stun, then he gets frozen. Yes, I have to invest another card in it, but if we're comparing him to a card like Primeval, which I think is a really fair comparison for this guy, you have to pay a green in order to get the stealth, which is kind of like the flight that Demogoblin has. I really feel like this guy is kind of like the new Primeval. Like, this is going to be, admittedly, 3 is not as good as 2 for a kind of Swiss Army knife, get in there and put wounds on dude's character. But given the format, in any format, this guy is worth a look, and given the format we're currently in, I think this guy stands to be one of the better 3-drops in the entire format. He seems great in basically every way. The only thing I would want differently on this card, give him 1 more health. But even that, I don't think is necessary. I think this is going to be a great 3-drop. Moving on to his brother of sorts, Doppelganger. I wish I had my authentic reaction to this, because it's not often, how do I want to say this? When we know what characters are coming in an expansion, I don't often think about, oh, I want to see this character with this specific look or this particular piece of card art. But there are a few stories, like Civil War was another, which I went on at some length, how near and dear to my heart it was. Lethal Protector and Maximum Carnage. Maximum Carnage in particular is maybe the comic book story that is the closest to my heart. Amazing Spider-Man 359 was the first comic book I have clear memories of reading. That was right going into the storyline. So there's a whole bunch of like growing up. Like I've read this story hundreds, if not thousands of times. So knowing that this was the name of the expansion and knowing that Doppelganger was probably a character we were going to get, I had in my head this exact piece of art. This is exactly what I wanted Doppelganger to look like. And when I first saw this card, I reacted with such joy. I said, and I'm still not totally sure that I'm free of this, but I love the art selection on this card so much that I'm not sure I can fairly evaluate the words on the card, because I'm so happy to see Doppelganger as a 2-drop, as like a little guy, which is perfect, small cost guy, with this exact art. Like the card's already a home run before we even get to the words. But let's look at the words. So this is a 2-cost character that gives you 7 attack. Let's say that again. 2 cost, 7 attack. Remember how 4 mana 7/7s are sort of like a cliche thing across a bunch of different games as being like overpowered stats for a drop? 2 cost, 7 attack. He's a 7/4/1. Mindless, which I'm going to come back to, and dodge. Now let's think about some other 2-drops that see a ton of play across a bunch of formats. A guy like Match. This dude completely shuts Match down. What Match wants to do, stay back and snipe and stack counters. This guy comes down and he's like, you can't shoot at me from range. You want to fight? Like, so good. This 7/4 is a gigantic stat line. Now and dodge is an excellent way to make your opponent have to deal with that 7 attack. Without dodge, his 7 attack might not be as relevant, particularly at this point in the curve, because there are a bunch of different range characters. Even stuff like Multiple Man could be a threat to this guy without dodge. I guess maybe not Multiple Man, he doesn't have range. Bad example, but Match in particular is one that comes to mind. Now let's look at Mindless. As an additional cost to recruit Doppelganger, discard a random card. So there's another card that forces us to discard a card when we play it, and that's Abominable Snowman. I've gone on at great length at how much value I think comes out of that card. There's a huge difference there, though, and that word is random. Discarding a random card is much worse, exponentially worse than being able to choose the card that you throw away. For one, you don't have the ability to generate the additional value for something like Hybrid, where you're choosing the card that you're throwing into the KO pile. You know what it's going to be. So you're almost turning this cost, this negative, into a benefit by having that card selection, particularly when it's on team to play the 3 symbiotes and Hybrid in this deck. Those things would all kind of dovetail together. This 2-drop helps support that strategy by feeding more symbiotes into the KO pile. Or does it? We don't know, because it's random. And some percent of the time, you're going to roll those dice and you're going to discard the card you needed to recruit on turn 3. I think it's probably still worth it. This guy seems absolutely insane. You're going to put him into aggro decks. Yes, Mindless does chip away at a weakness that aggro decks already tend to have, which is they run out of gas in the mid game and they're completely dead by the late game. He is going to accelerate the rate at which you're burning up gas. But if you play this guy down, you discard 1 card and you're able to stun 2, 3 things before he gets cleaned up off the board. He puts 2 wounds on the main character before you do a 1-for-1 trade with your opponent. That is amazing value for a 2-drop. This guy is excellent. And by virtue of this 2-drop and 3-drop being excellent, that means this Shriek is pretty darn good too. Now, I don't know about the Shriek main character. I still think her level up condition might be a little bit too difficult, but this 6-drop Shriek is decent, and coupled with these cards, which are great. So this is not the same thing as what happened with Hybrid. What happened with Hybrid is you're playing a bunch of like really low power, borderline bad characters for a big payoff. And what you're doing here is playing 2 great characters that have the gravy of an okay payoff. If she's free, that's amazing. Now, she's not going to be free most of the time. Most of the time, she's going to cost 3. But a turn 5 play of Shriek and Doppelganger does not feel bad at all. That feels pretty good. And if you are able to chain these guys, like you are able to play the Doppelganger, your opponent can't get the board to deal with them, you use Demon Goblin to shoot at a guy from behind and then throw out a free Shriek on turn 3. So your turn 3 is your main character plus these 3 bodies. Whoa. That feels really strong. So let's move on to Toxin. It's going to be hard to react authentically to this guy because I've spent some time thinking about the card at this point, but I don't really care for this card art. It's not my favorite. Looks kind of passive, looks kind of boring. As a 4/4/7, the numbers on this card are extremely impressive. Starting off as a 4/4 is good. 7 health is great. It's been a defining feature of some main characters in various formats over the years more than once. Like the Leviathan Mother comes to mind as a character that gets played solely on the back of having 3 health, or 7 health. 3, that would be terrible. His level up condition, when Venom or Carnage appears on your side, he gets XP. He can only get 1 from each. That's frankly bad. I do not like that level up condition. That means if you're playing the 1-drop Carnage and the 4-drop Venom, what was the other Venom that we got in Lethal Protector? That seems slow, and it seems variant heavy. The more you draw, the better you'll do at it. But the thing about this guy is, do you even want to level up? So he's a 4/4, gets counters, and he's going to keep those counters because of Symbiosis. So you're going to want to have things in this deck that let you stack counters on this dude. At level 2, he becomes an 8/8 and still has Symbiosis. The problem here, though, is the 1000th in the lineage. Toxin can only attack the face-up enemy character with the highest attack. And if he can't attack it, he can't attack. That's not good. You don't want something on your 8/8, maybe a 12/12 with counters, or a 15/15 with counters. You don't want something on that guy that makes it so your opponent can just not let you attack. And often not often, but some amount of the time, the character with the most health is going to be a guy like Galactus, or the most attack. So he's going to hide in the back row anyway. And if Toxin can't get through to him, then you just don't get to attack with this guy. So I think there's maybe a world where you build this deck around just put in everything that stacks screen counters. You don't even really worry about leveling up. And if you do, it's only after you have such complete control of the board that your opponent's not going to be able to build in such a way where they can tuck a character in the back and completely neuter your ability to declare attacks with Toxin. There's a lot of ifs, maybes. I don't think this main character is going to end up being super great. There is a world where starting with 4/4 and stacking Symbiosis +1s on him could get pretty crazy, but then at that point, does everybody just start packing so much green counter hate that it's not worth the hoops you're jumping through? I don't know. Probably I will have fun with this guy at the kitchen table, almost for sure. It's hard to imagine a world where I don't take these 4/4/7 and 8/8/7 and do something with that. That's just so many stats that I want to play around with it. I hate this level 2 power. I think it's really bad. And I don't like his level up. 7 cost Toxin, Symbiote affiliated, 1/1/3. With Symbiosis, he gets +1 counters, and he's the strongest and most dangerous. He has Berserker, Climb, Fearless, Ferocious, Leap, Lethal, and Violent, which is a lot of fun to say. Leap, Lethal, and Violent just rolls off the tongue. So if you play this guy and attack with him after climbing, he's going to be a 3/3, which means he'll hit for 6 on turn 7. That is not good enough. The only way this guy is going to be good is I think you've got to get at least 2 more counters on him. I think he's got to be at least a 5/5. So the Berserker and Climb gives him 2. So he's a 5/5. So then he hits for 10. Yes, it's Ferocious, so that feels pretty good. But, I mean, I think that's where you need to be on turn 7. We've got 10/10/7 drops now, and this guy's a 1/1. It's not... I don't know. Okay, so to run through these real quick... Shriek main character, I give that thumbs up. The characters that she lets you play for free are great. I think her level up is probably gonna suck. I think she's probably gonna end up being too slow to do anything competitive, but I want all the excuses in the world to play with Doppelganger and Demon Goblin. I'm 100% gonna build this, although I'll be honest, I'm more excited about Shriek 6-drop. Thumbs up on that character. Big thumbs up on Demon Goblin, big thumbs up on Doppelganger. I love this whole package, and I think even independent of this package with Shriek, these guys are going to have utility of their own entirely separate. There's going to be decks that just want a 6-attack flying range 3-drop that can freeze dudes. That's going to be good enough in a bunch of different use cases. I feel like the same thing is going to be true of Doppelganger, and potentially... even though you don't get to choose the discard, there may be a way that you can get your hand low enough that when you play Doppelganger, you're still kind of choosing the discard because you've already vomited your resources out to the board. So this could still play well with Hybrid, I think. Toxin main character, I got to give this guy a solid thumbs medium. I'm not sure what his home's going to be. I think this level up condition is really bad. Yes, it could get better at any point. If at any point we get more Venoms and we get more Carnages and we have the ability to run 12 or like the number of different Spider-Mans that we have. If we end up in that situation with characters named Venom and Carnage, then this guy looks much better. But even if he levels up, this power it's probably going to be irrelevant a ton of the time. It's just not going to matter. But the place where it's going to matter is going to be the tournament table. The kind of players who are going to play to this are going to exist at the tournament table. And I don't like gifting my opponent that kind of thing. I do think there's a world where you just ignore his level up entirely and you focus on counter generation and these big numbers on him, and that might be good enough. So that's why I'm giving him a thumbs medium at this time. I'm really unconfident. I think this guy's going to be fun, maybe, and he might not even be fun. He might just be a frustrating trap. Finally, the Toxin 7-drop. I think I got to give this guy a thumbs down. This is a fun idea. It's a cool take on, hey, let's give a symbiote like a ton of stuff. And Berserker, Climb, Fearless, Ferocious, Leap, Lethal, and Violent. Like, it's so much stuff, but he's just completely wrecked by like a Cosmo. Who's not in the format, I admit, but nonetheless, like any kind of nullification turns this guy into the worst 7 recruit points you've ever spent in your life. So I think I got to give Toxin supporting character a thumbs down. Okay, so that gets us through the first set. Moving on to today's spoilers. So kind of scanning through the top here to see if there's any new information. It looks like it's just kind of the same thing. Have you ever thought to yourself, what we need more than anything is a different color goblin? All the time. All the time. 5-cost red goblin, symbiote affiliated, 7/4. It's crazy that this guy's a 5-drop and he has the same, how dare you, and he has the same stat block as this team's 2-drop. That is bonkers. Okay, Red Goblin, aka Green Goblin. He has Symbiosis and Sadistic Ultimatum. Main phase, pay a green, choose a supporting character on the enemy player's side. That player chooses to put that character into its owner's hand or stun it. Whoa! Okay, so the stats, 7/4 with range and flight, 2 health on 5 is okay. That's fine. It's not great, but the fact that he has range, so there's going to be times where you can make use of that 7 attack and not get hit back, and he's going to be able to sneak some stuns in here and there. But this is not a fan. I mean, we just saw a 2-drop that has this same stat line. So that's not fantastic. But he does have Symbiosis, which means he's going to grow. And given the fact that he has, well, of course, he has to have multiple health. If you don't have multiple health, Symbiosis would be stupid. Sadistic Ultimatum. So I'm paying 1 card, and I'm either putting a wound on your guy or putting him in your hand. Now, there's certainly going to be cards that you don't want to use this on. Like if an opponent has a card that has a really good appear effect, this would be a bad character to use this on. But in a way, it's like a 1-card time walk. Now, because we don't have Summoning Sickness in this game, they're already going to have swung with that guy. So they play their character out, and they get to do their thing with it, which is, I mean, let's face it, if your opponent is doing it, it's probably bad for you. That's sort of the nature of card games. But without having to deal with it honestly, this just lets you delete a character. 1-cost guys just die. Maybe your opponent chooses to put it back in their hand, but do you even care about that? Like, oh, you invested 7 recruit points in a Mr. Fantastic and you had to pay the red to use him to stun something? Okay, how about you put him back in your hand and I don't have to deal with Shrink or Tough? Like, there are so many places where this is going to look incredible. incredible. And if the meta does trend towards a world full of fatties, and I think that might be... well, I don't want to get into analyzing the second chance meta right here, but I think there's probably going to be a bunch of decks that are relying on fatties in that meta. This lets you just delete them for one card. That feels really good. Is it good enough that I want to use my entire turn 5 to do it? I mean, if I'm already on a deck that's spitting out green counters, so this Symbiosis, like I'm already on cards like Our Name is Venom or whatever that's called. Yeah, okay, cool. Spider Carnage. Weird background here. Like the art, not sure about this background. 1 cost, dual affiliated Spider Friends and Symbiote, so he'll have 8 wilds for whatever this red does. 1 cost, 2/2/2. That's a fine stat line for a 1-drop. It's not like crazy, but we've seen plenty of like 2/2/1. So 2/2/2 across this guy plus Symbiosis. I played a ton of the 1 cross Carnage. Does this guy count as Carnage? Probably not, because it's not the Carnage, it's Spider Carnage. Okay, aka Scarlet Spider with Symbiosis. The 1 cost Carnage who has Symbiosis and the ability to self-generate counters is pretty decent. Web Sling, move a back row enemy character to its front row. That is why you play this card. If you're running a Symbiote deck, your opponent's going to do things to try to hide their characters from you because you're going to have big dudes on board stacking green counters. This guy exists for Web Sling. And while I have definitely come down a little bit harsh on 1 cost characters that require a location, because essentially that turns your 1-drop into a combo. The thing is, I don't think you have to play this guy in 1. I think this guy is good throughout the whole game, and whenever you have the red that you need, that's when you throw him out. That's when you draw the character forward, and you play him to use this power. And I think in a deck that's trying to be aggressive and win by fighting on the board, it seems like he fits right in. I don't think this is going to be like generally like a game-breaking 1-drop, but for aggressive decks that can run the wilds for both of these teams, and maybe you're on reds anyway, that's good. That effect is really good. And I think the first time we saw this effect, the guy that had it was a 4-drop. Was it a 4-drop Spider-Man in the base box? I mean, whatever the Spider-Man was in the base box, he had basically the same power. But you had to wait until turn 4 for it. This guy's way better, and that lets you use this power like a tech option. This is good. I think this is a really good card. Scorn. Can't say I'm crazy about this art. Can't say I'm crazy about it. Don't really like it, actually. 7 cost, Symbiote affiliated, 7/10/2 with Symbiosis. Techno Symbiote. Scorn can have equipment while stunned. But she can still only have 1 equipment. So, total side note, my son made a custom gunslinger Predator main character, and one of the abilities that he tested for that guy was letting him have equipment while stunned. And let me tell you, it is brutal. Now, she has Symbiosis, so you're not going to be able to put any of the team-specific equipment on her. But if you can get, like, a weapon on her, so she's a 7/15, or she's a 13/10 with range, and you can't stun that off of her, whoa. I mean, so she's not... I don't think this is a generally good 7-drop. This is not a 7-drop you're going to throw into all your decks. This is not even a 7-drop you're going to throw into all your Symbiote decks. But if there is a deck where you think you're going to reliably get the Isosphere, or, I mean, that's another one that would be sick here. This is a good ability. Tucking it onto a 7-drop means it's probably not going to see a ton of play just because there's a lot of games that end before turn 7. Not all games, but some percentage of games end before turn 7, which means how heavily do you go in on this? Like how many copies of 7-drop do you generally run in your deck? So it's much more competitive at this end of the curve than it is for 1-drops, but I think there's probably going to be findable combos within the meta that are going to make her pretty cool, man. And like, this is a meta or Second Chance is a meta where Maker is legal, and he lets you basically get any equipment you want on turn 6. So I think that seems cool. Seems like a cool effect. I would like to see it on a character a little bit lower in the drop, little bit lower in the curve. But having already played with this effect with Whitman's homebrew cards, I can attest it can be a nightmare to deal with a character that you just can't get the active camo off of them. 4-cost sleeper, symbiote affiliated, 3/6/2. Not a big fan of that stat line for a 4-drop. Enhanced symbiote. Sleeper can have and gain +1 counters while hidden and stunned. Whoa, okay. Sure. That makes his stat line seem way less bad. Chemokinesis. Main phase. Pay yellow. Sleeper has stealth this turn. At the end of turn, you can hide him. This just seems good. The stat line is a little weak. 3 attack on turn 4 is not a good feeling at all. I don't care for that. 6 defense on 4 is it's not awesome either, but he has these extra ways to, I guess this doesn't give him counters, but it's not extra ways to get counters, it's extra windows during which counters could be put on him. And again, I keep bringing it up, but that Our Name is Venom plot twist is really relevant for this team. This guy seems very solid. If you want to play a symbiosis deck, this seems like a dude that you want. And stealth is no joke. Wow. Yeah, I think that card's going to be good. Symbiote Codex. This art is cool. This is objectively good art, I think, but it's not what I wanted to see. I wanted, well, art like this. That's what I wanted. Put a +1 counter on a character on your side in combat. If it has symbiosis, it gains ferocious. Otherwise, it gains symbiosis until the start of your next build phase. That's good. This is good. You think you're going to clear a bunch of counters off of somebody, and they play this, and now all of a sudden the counters stick. Maybe you had to invest a plot twist or two, or put a team attack into it to try to get those counters off, and now you can't. Now they're stuck there. Or even worse, you invested heavily to get the stun, and the dude already has symbiosis, and now he's ferocious and just value smacks you. That's really, really strong. Oh, so that must be... So that's it. So these cards are going to come out on November 17th. Let's go through this list again. Red Goblin. I think this guy's a thumbs up. He's not a play everywhere card, but this ability is good if you're on symbiosis anyway. This guy's a thumbs up. Spider Carnage is a thumbs up. I think this card has an excellent set of words here. Web Sling on a 1-drop. If you're on reds, I don't know that you would like warp your deck to play reds just to fit this guy in. But if you're on these teams already and on reds, if he has 12 chances to use this is a great tech card to just throw a few in. Maybe you don't play him on turn 1, but if you're on symbiosis and counter generation, you can play him on turn 1, and he has late game utility to pull that Weasley back row main character up to the front so you can get that last wound on him. This guy's good. Scorn. Very interesting power. I'm going to give this card a thumbs up, although I'm a little skeptical how much actual competitive play she's going to see. Turn 7 is deep in the game. I'm not 100% sure this is good enough to justify this being your 7-drop. Like, by turn 7, I want to play things that come down and do stuff right now. That being said, the more equipment in the game, the better she gets. Like, it would be cool if you could put like an isosphere on her. She attacks into somebody, gets stunned, so she's face down, but still has the isosphere on her. Would you even do the Battle of Wills at that point? I don't think you would. Ooh, interesting question. I'm not sure about that. Sleeper, thumbs up. This is another thumbs up card. I think if you're on now, it does remain to be seen how competitively viable the symbiosis deck is going to be. It might just be a kitchen table deck, and the only thing that the tournament scene is going to see out of this box is going to be a bunch of like tech cards. That could be the case, but guys like this are starting to make me a believer in symbiosis. While a lot of these cards don't have the best numbers printed on them, there's so many ways to generate counters. They're all going to keep them. Your opponent's going to have trouble keeping up, which means they're not going to be able to attack your guys at as quick of a pace. And maybe that's what this team is going to do. This is going to be an aggro team, but instead of doing that thing where they have to keep deploying resources and therefore deplete their gas tank, what this team does is they get so big that it's hard for the opponent to strike back. So even though you're running out of gas, you're able to stick a board because your opponent can't keep up, which is kind of a different sort of aggro deck, and I'm really interested to see if it works. Thumbs up for Sleeper. Absolute giant thumbs up for this codex. That plot twist is ridiculous. It's very good. All right. So that was two sets of reviews back to back. Sorry that my the reveal set 2 was not authentic first reactions, and I would like to get back to doing live streams for the reactions, but just life didn't let it happen this time. Love all you guys. Appreciate the patrons. Shout out to the people who support what we do here. If you like what we do here, patreon.com/thebuildphase. Of course, buildphasenetwork.com is where you can check out our other shows and articles and things that we do. And as always, until next time, go win some games.